Welcome back, everybody, to episode 2 of our Perspective series about transforming the employee experience through well-being. My name is Nora Egan, and I'm the Associate Chief of Staff here at Thoughtium. I'm also a registered dietitian with a real passion for holistic well-being. Here at Thoughtium, we have a progressive view on how you can enhance the employee experience through well-being, and I'm excited to continue to unpack that with you today with another guest. You can find all 3 of our episodes, our toolkit, as well as my article at thoughttium.com/perspectives. Today, I'm excited to welcome back a returning guest, Max Schneider. He is the founder of Sand and Salt Escapes, which is a company based on mindfulness retreats and offsites, and it's the purpose of helping people slow down and focus on their well-being. So with that, welcome, Max.
What's up? It is a pleasure to be here.
Welcome back. Excited you're here.
Yeah, I'm excited for the conversation today.
Yeah. So I know some people are recognizing your face and some people may not. So hoping you can kick us off with just a little bit of how you got to where you are today and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Loaded
So
question.
I am a it's interesting to even ask that question of who are you and like what angle do you attack it at. For purposes of this discussion, I was in management consulting for about 10 years. And I burnt out really hard at the end of 2021. I got shingles, was having anxiety attacks, and really just felt like a shell of a human being. So I didn't know what to do, hadn't been through that before. And at the same time, my wife, who's a physical therapist, was starting her own practice. So we needed to have one income and decided that we were going to pick up and go down to Costa Rica for a little bit because at that time it was not really possible for me to quit what we were doing. The first night we were down there, the second night we were down there, the third night we were down there, just getting a chance to really step into that kind of silence. Each of those 3 nights I dreamt that I went in, put in my notice and quit my job. So I looked at Kelly on that third morning and said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I think that I need to quit. So then as that month went on, we were down on a surf and yoga retreat. I just started experiencing joy in ways that I hadn't in so long. I started to really kind of think about like a snow globe and shaking it up. Some of that snow started to settle and I was able to see parts of myself that I hadn't in a while. And what I knew to be true was that there's so many people in the corporate space who we all go through these ebbs and flows to our career where sometimes we just lose touch with who we are as human beings. We see ourselves as titles, whether that's at work, whether that's as a parent, whether that's as a sibling. But so often we don't see ourselves as human beings. And I wanted to create a space for people to be able to slow down and see themselves as people and focus on their own well-being. And that was the inspiration behind Sand and Salt Escapes and the work that we do, which is running retreats for individuals in Nosara, Costa Rica, that are all focused on movement, mindfulness, and conversation. And then we do the same thing for executive and intact teams in Costa Rica and in Palm Springs, California.
Which we were lucky enough to be one of those groups, and we'll get into that. But it's so cool to hear that you really created something that you needed and saw other people did too.
Yeah, that was, I think, what's allowed me to be able to pour myself into this. And at the core of what we're doing, like the ethos of it, is we want to bring humanity into the workplace. Because I think that society teaches us that we aren't, it shows us a lot of parts of ourselves that aren't maybe true and teach us to believe that we're things that at our core we're not, because at our core we're human beings and we take that into work. We take that into our family life, into our personal life, into our relationships. And I want to create a place where we can just bring humanity back into the workplace. So it's been incredibly meaningful to be able to do that and to get to work with teams like yours in that process.
Yeah. When I think you've experienced, I've also experienced being in workplaces where that is not true. And I'm lucky now to be in a place where that's definitely a value of ours. But as you've seen in your 10 years in consulting and where you stand today working with other organizations, like, why do you think that this has become so important in the last few years, or maybe why it was even before then?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that are going on. One is that just at a more societal level, there is a better understanding of like what it means to be well and what it means to take care of yourself, not just thinking about like the food that you're putting in your body or the way that you're moving your body, but also your mental and emotional health and what that really entails. So I think that's one really big thing that's going on, and you see it across, like, you don't have to go very far in your Instagram ads to see all these crazy new wellness products and like these biohacking and all these things that are going on. So I think that's one really big trend that's happening in the workplace. And then I think the second thing that happened is that our relationship with work shifted during COVID. We started to really understand a little bit more about the impact that our workplaces have on our own well-being. And with the amount of time that we spend at work or doing work, we need our employer to be able to actually support us as a holistic person, so that we can take care of ourselves, because we spend more time at work than we do doing pretty much anything else.
Right. And obviously, there's so much work to be done in the actual workplace, but where your real expertise takes place is outside of the workplace. And I'd love to hear just a little bit of like why you think it's so important to get out of that space and have that experience with your team.
Yeah, so I'll paint a little bit of a picture of like what an offsite looks like for us, and then why that is so important to get out of the workplace to do this type of work. So on the offsites that we run, we are doing, it's all focused around the pillars of movement, mindfulness, and conversation. So we rent gorgeous estates, like the one that we were all at in Palm Springs together. We rent gorgeous estates. We have a private chef on site. We're taking care of everything for the guests, so the guests can truly slow down and focus on themselves. We're doing movement in the morning, or perhaps mindfulness, really depends on the group and what they're looking for. We have other mindfulness activities in the afternoon. So we're doing things like meditation, we're doing things like sound baths, we're doing things like breath work, we're doing things like painting. And then the middle of the day is all around conversations. And these conversations go deep. They're types of conversations that we generally don't have in the workplace, that give people the space to understand a little bit more about who they are as human beings and connect with themselves and each other in the process in pretty profound ways. Why that work is so important to do outside of the workplace is that it gives us the opportunity to step into a totally different physical setting, to actually leave work behind and focus on ourselves free of distraction. Because to go deep, you can't be thinking about and like actually do real self-exploration. You can't be thinking about the meeting that you just came out of, or going home tonight and cooking dinner, and all these other distractions that we have every day. So getting out of the workplace, going somewhere separate, and having this space where we can really go deep is so important in order to be able to do this work in an effective way.
Definitely. And I mean, we all experienced that, our Thoughtium team, with how lasting of effect it really had. And while it was a one-time experience and a few days that we got to connect, it has lasted almost a year now. And I'd love if you could talk about a little bit of like how it is an ongoing process, and how maybe it isn't this quick fix of a couple of days, but how you instill these in teams to carry on after the actual retreat.
Yeah. So what happens on the retreat and in those conversations is barriers get broken down. We see each other not as our titles, not as a project manager, not as a VP, not as a salesperson, but we see each other as human beings. And when you start pulling away those layers and connect with each other, there's something really remarkable that happens with that connection. So when folks go back, I know like has been a case with some of the feedback that we got with you all at Thoughtium, hierarchies disappear. Communication becomes very different. The way that people collaborate, the way that people understand, okay, I can lean on this person for something because I didn't know this about them before. It separates everything from doing like traditional team building exercises or like high ropes course, which have their place depending upon the purpose.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to do this kind of work, it's really critical to be able to like have more authentic experiences. And then when you see each other as human beings, you can bring that back into work in a way that you don't otherwise get to.
Right. And I think the biggest thing is like That's a kind of a scary space for a lot of people to think about entering with their teams. Like, I know when I was going, a lot of people were like, what are you doing? Like, I've gone on Kairos and all these other different retreats that were like, deep seated things that maybe you don't talk about. And that was not what it was. Like you said, it was really connection and being vulnerable about certain things, sure. But it was really about entering this space with the trust that we already had in our team. And I'm curious, like, what do people and teams need to have in order to be able to successfully go on this journey with like Sand and Salt and you?
This type of work is not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's probably not for most people and most organizations. To the point we were talking about before about just the world of well-being and thinking about employees as human beings, we're at the very, very front edge of that trend and that push that shift that's happening in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So as we sit here, there's a lot of organizations that this just isn't the right fit for, because what we're looking for and what makes this experience just so tremendous for companies is when, one, you have a leader who truly cares about their teams as human beings, mm-hmm. not just like on paper, not just saying that that's one of our values, but it shows up in every detail in the way that they interact with their team. So that's one thing that we look for when we look for potential clients. Another thing that we look for is, has there been a culture of openness created? That's so important, because the activities we're doing, sound baths, breath work, it is a little bit of a leap of faith. There is like this kind of angsty feeling, but that feeling is always the precursor to learning. That bit of anxiousness, that bit of discomfort, and being like, oh gosh, what am I stepping into? That is what is, every time that's present, you're about to learn something totally. And have a new experience. So when we look at and we're talking with different organizations about this kind of work, it's so important that they've created a culture of openness, and that shows up with their teams in the way that they work day to day. And then that allows them to be able to step in this kind of experience and truly get an incredible depth of value out of it.
100%. And we are speaking to some business leaders. We're speaking to small, big, a lot of different, arenas of people understanding well-being in this space. And as we know, many leaders want to know, like, what is the return on whatever investment they're going to make in this? Or how can you get them to understand the value of this when maybe there isn't a specific ROI to be giving them?
Yeah, ROI is a really interesting concept. I think, first of all, just like in the current business landscape, a lot of the ways that we think about ROI, the ways that we measure ROI are being challenged when you look at the shift from things like waterfall methodology to operating in a much more iterative fashion. The way that we think about and measure ROI is shifting. And when it comes to this kind of work, this work is also part of that conversation, the shift of ROI. And there's a challenge when we talk about ROI for creating an experience where we're focusing on people as human beings, where if we put ROI at the center of the conversation, we have already totally derailed what the purpose of this work is. The purpose of the work is to help bring humanity back into the workplace, for people to see each other as human beings, and putting ROI at the center totally changes that conversation. The second reason why we don't like to lead with ROI for this is because if we are seeking to achieve a certain ROI, when we go to design something, then like that's going to be at the center of the design conversation, right? Rather than slowing down and thinking about, like, so we've got a client that we're working with right now, and what we define as a purpose of the offsite that we're shaping for them is pushing a team's understanding of what's possible, both as leaders and as human beings, so that we can enable each person and the entire team to step into their power. That's the focus of what we're doing. So everything that we design falls into that. It's a North Star. It's a filter that everything goes through. But if we're sitting here, and we can talk about ROI metrics all day long, you can talk about how employees who are, and this is like straight out of Gallup research, employees who say that their workplace strongly cares about them as individuals are 3 times more likely to be engaged at work. They're 5 times more likely to recommend their place of work to other people who are looking for jobs. Like, that kind of information is out there. It all is true. It all exists. But if we're focusing and designing for a particular ROI for this kind of work, we've already defeated the purpose of what it is.
Right.
So that's why when we're looking for the right kind of partner for this work, it's so important to find leaders who care about their people as human beings, and that's what they want to invest in, rather than saying, okay, what is this going to do to our engagement, or how are we going to impact attrition with this kind of work?
Mm-hmm. And well, speaking of that, since I wasn't at the table while you were talking to our leadership team, I'd love to hear like how that conversation got started and what things sparked right away with Thoughtium or even other teams that click, we're ready to move forward with you guys.
Right. When we've connected with your all's leadership team, one thing that really stood out is that everybody on the leadership team has their own mindfulness practice. They understand intrinsically the value of this kind of work, whether it's through things like meditation, whether it's through things like yoga. They already have their own mindfulness practice. So what we do in these conversations is we always lead with the experience first. Sure, ROI can be part of the conversation, but we lead with the experience. And that's what we have to get aligned on. If we're aligned and we're excited about the experience, everything else flows from there. But getting a chance to talk with Amanda, with Griff, with Anthony, with Norm, and knowing their own practices, that's a huge impact on our ability to collaborate together, to create something meaningful. And it also shows the kind of culture that has been built at Thoughtium.
Right.
But I'm curious.
They already understand the benefits. Like they already know. You're not as selling what is true.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm curious, kind of from your perspective, like working at Thoughtium, how does that show up for you all just in the day to day when you have leaders who get mindfulness, who care about their people, like as human beings? Like, how does that show up for you all?
It's in like everything that we do. It's from Anthony's workout routine to Amanda's a mom to Norm spending time away at a retreat of his own. Like they really live it. It's not as much just telling us to do it ourselves. I think that's right away so clear to all of us that they respect our boundaries, and it's really cool to see it true in the world. And I've worked at other places where like, yeah, you have a work-life balance or like the culture is great, but like I think we really feel valued here. And the retreat was a huge testament of that. But in so many different things, like the way we spend time together when people come in every quarter or so, and the things that we do together just make it like so true to us that we live our values. And it's not just what we say that we do. It's the same way we work with our clients. It's the same way we talk to each other. Like we talk about life before we jump into a meeting. We want to know what you did this weekend. Silly little things like that, but like that's how we really connect.
Yeah, it's so important. And that, like, those examples too are so much farther down the line than when you've got organizations who are talking about wellness benefits with things like discounted gym memberships or healthy food in the kitchen. That stuff's table stakes. And it's not changing anybody's behavior. When you offer discounted gym memberships, all you're doing is you're discounting the membership or rewarding the person who's already going to the gym. When you put healthier food in the kitchen, all you're doing is like giving the person who's already planning to have healthy food another option to eat. It's not changing behavior of anyone. But when you're actually like leading and making those investments that the Thoughtium team did to say, okay, let's take this entire team. Let's go somewhere offsite. Let's not talk about work. We did no strategy planning. There's no formal business conversation. Let's connect as human beings and get to know each other as people.
Right.
That's a meaningful investment in the well-being. That's a signal to your point about the culture that is created within an organization, and not just like having an app on your phone where we're logging steps and doing competitions. That's not changing behavior. It's not moving the needle in a meaningful way.
Right. And I think, even as we've been doing this perspective series, or I've done research for the last few months on like what well-being should look like in the workplace, it's just so eye-opening that everyone defines it very differently. And as a dietitian, as a person who's worked in like the people and culture arena, I think I had an idea of what I thought people wanted. And it was cool to very quickly realize you can't fix it or match it with one program, with one stipend, with one anything, because it's about connecting as a team. It's building a culture that builds what people actually want, not just what you're assuming they need.
So what have you found in doing that research that people really do want?
that's what was really cool. Like from the get-go, like one person, it was more spiritual. One person, it was more about their building of community. One person, it is about health. Like, and that's today. Like 6 months from now, they could have a completely different definition of it. So that
Mhm.
was just a moment of like, it's always changing. It's always individual. Every experience they have can shift it. And again, like there's just no one recipe, which I think is like the way that you work with different companies, big and small, different industries, like you build them with their team. And I'd love to hear a little bit about like how you go through that process of building it so it's like what they truly need.
Yeah, I am happy to chat about that. And I think, and I also want to add on one thing to what you're saying before
Yeah.
there, where when we talk about mindful, like everybody wants something different, and in 6 months from now, it could be something like it's going to
Right.
change, it's going to shift because we're dynamic beings, we're always changing, we're always shifting. Why mindfulness is so important and why we focus on mindfulness is like at a really high level. All mindfulness is being aware of the present moment, absent any judgment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's all we're talking about. And when we slow down, when we practice mindfulness, we get to a place where we can see those things that are going on within ourselves. We create that space, we create that silence so that we can figure out, okay, today, these are the types of things that are really important to me. And in
Mm-hmm.
6 months from now, if I'm continuing to slow down, if I'm continuing to listen, if I'm continuing to tune in, I'll be aware of those things that are important to me in my own journey. Um,
Right.
and that's the beauty of mindfulness, is it creates that muscle, that training to slow down, to tune in. And the mindfulness also isn't about like learning meditation. It's not about
Mm-hmm.
learning yoga or whatever other practice you're really into. What mindfulness does is it prepares us to step into our day-to-day life. And when we're in a situation, we've been practicing meditation and we've learned about the fundamentals of it, and then we get into a situation where all of a sudden we feel like a very negative emotional charge within our body. That ability, because we practice this in meditation, we've practiced the observation, we've practiced noticing like where we feel it in the body, we've practiced understanding where that might come from. When we're just going about our day-to-day life, we can observe that, we can see it, and we can accept it, and then show up in a very different way rather than creating this tension. So yeah, we're always
Yeah.
changing, to your
Right.
point. But mindfulness is so helpful because it allows us to slow down and figure out like, how am I changing? What do I
Yeah.
need? And those are the important questions to be asking. It's not about having the right answer. You're never going to have like the right answer of what you need for yourself because it's always changing. It's just about, am I slowing down? Am I tuning in? Am I listening to it?
Which I think was a really cool thing that we got to experience with you, like even the word mindfulness. It's like there wasn't like a lesson plan of like, here it is, like, here's how you do it. It was like, it's weaved throughout and you're just experiencing it. And like you're saying, working on this muscle that maybe you're not familiar with, but we're going to continue to push your boundaries a little bit and do these things that you're not on your phone, you're not with your normal group of people. Like you're in this and you're learning it no matter what.
Right. And it's beautiful too because each person comes away from it with what they need. We're not prescriptive with this. We're not saying like, this is what you need to be doing. It's why we try a bunch of different
Mm-hmm.
stuff. That's why we do sounds, why we do breath work. That's why we do yoga. That's why we do painting. We want to try a bunch of different stuff because there is no recipe. We're all very different, very unique human beings, and we all have different things that resonate
Right.
with us. We all need different things at different points of the journey. So yeah, just getting that exposure to realizing for some people, oh my, like, to go into a sound bath is one of the most meditative things in the world, or the of things you can notice in yourself in doing like holotropic breath work and really moving through those cycles. It's so powerful for some people, and some other people lean towards
Right.
other
Right.
modalities. And we don't want to prescribe anything because you're like, we're all different human beings. We all need different things. But mindfulness allows us to see what we need as
Right.
humans for ourselves.
So, like the same way that I feel like I tried to get to know my team and their needs, how do you approach getting to know what a team actually wants from a retreat with you?
Yeah. So this is going back to the questions you asked I didn't answer. So thank you for it's very gentle nudge on
I just want
reminder
to
of
know
that
the
one.
answer, really.
So what we do is we, at a really high level, like we curate extraordinary offsites for teams to slow down and focus on their own well-being. And through that process, they walk away with profound connections to themselves and to others. That means different things for different organizations. If we're working with an executive team where the CEO recently stepped into the leadership position and is really trying to set a different cultural tone, that's a very different situation than if we're working with a team that's been running really hard for the last 12 months and needs a break and needs a chance to slow down. The same type of, like on the surface, the same type of modalities can be very helpful for that. But what that allows us to do in understanding, like really, what are we actually setting out to accomplish? Like the example with the client that I shared earlier, where it's about helping them understand really what's possible and be able to push their edges a bit. That's what we have to understand. And that's where the beauty of the nuance comes into play, because what we're doing isn't of like at Sensal Escapes, we're not out here like building a business that we're trying to scale, that we're going to be the next unicorn and sell it for X amount of dollars. The whole intention of this is just to do really, really high quality work that puts good out into the world that we enjoy doing. So that detail to paying attention to the nuances, to what is important with the team is really critical. So we sit down with the client, the CEO, the leadership team, depending on who it is, and we get an understanding of what's important to them. We get an understanding of the team dynamics, and we get an understanding of each individual person on that team. So it's kind of 3 different levels with that. From there, we decide, okay, this is what the purpose of the offsite is going to be. We're very meticulous with the wording because it's the filter we put everything through. And then from there, we begin the design process, which is really taking those different elements of the movement, the mindfulness, the conversation, and figuring out how do we weave these things together to create that ultimate experience for the client.
Yeah. And I just want to say the thing that I think I found the most profound during our retreat was it was truly for the individual and for the collective, which I feel like is hard to do. Like we felt just as connected to ourselves and to each other, which I didn't expect going in. And like you said, it was a mix of, I'd say the conversation piece was probably the most valuable for me. We got to sit in a group. We did you led us through a facilitation that was supposed to last 20 minutes or maybe a half an hour. There's only 13 of us, so not long. And it took 2 hours, 4 hours. I don't remember how long exactly.
Yeah, we just like totally blew up another conversation we're planning to have, and we just kept going deep into that one. But it was what was important at the time, because it was going so deep, and it was like very connective conversation.
It was it was really like we went around the room, everyone shared what they really saw in the other people, and it wasn't like just compliments. It was really like deep seated, like, who are you and how do I receive you? And I think that that was just a way that we don't normally talk to each other. So it was a really cool way for us to connect. And I know for myself, like the whole experience, I felt very invested in it as a person. And like, I felt like the team wanted me there. I felt like I belonged there. And I think that that's just something you don't expect to get out of just like a wellness retreat. Like when you hear that word, you don't really know what you're getting, but I think it's just you deliver such a well-rounded product that I don't know if people can understand unless they go, which they should. But I just want to say that I really got a lot from it as an individual, and I know our team did too.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Then that's like this in the relationships that we've been able to build afterwards, and staying in contact with you and the leadership team and the other folks in the team. Like that's the stuff that's so meaningful. I think that there's 2 things that are intrinsically real in life. One is our relationship with ourselves, and the other one is our relationship with others. Everything else we've just like invented as a species, whether you want to talk about like politics, the economy, like everything around us, we've just kind of invented, and a lot of it's good. But from the day we show up on this earth, there's 2 things that are intrinsically real. It's our relationship with ourselves and relationship with others. And when we can help people really tap into that, I mean, like, there's nothing more meaningful.
Yeah. And just to tie that back to the business 1%, is that like the people that you work with and that you spend all your time with, whether it's at a retreat or in the workplace, like those are the people you need to invest in. And I think that just this whole well-being conversation is about bringing it back to the people and bringing it back to just not the workplace, but we need to look at our team as the same way we look at making R&D. Like I worked at an overnight oats company, and all we talked about was the taste and the texture and the seal. And like people that work at Glassdoor, all they think about is like the customer experience. And like it should be looked at the same way as how you're building up the people that run your business.
That was beautiful. I couldn't agree more.
Perfect. Well, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to say before I hit you with some rapid fire questions?
No,
Okay,
I'm ready for them.
First one is, what is one shift that you have recently added to improve your own well-being?
Morning meditation. 6 weeks ago, I started doing it in the mornings. I had an afternoon spot that I always meditated, but I put that in the mornings with some somatic work as well. And it has made a massive difference in the way that I show up in my day. And I'm sure it'll shift in 6 months from now too. But right now, morning meditation's a big.
And just a second one. What is one tip that you would give someone that wants to start working on their well-being today?
Start small. Don't try to boil the ocean. Pick one thing and make sure it's something so start small, do something that you enjoy. Stick with it and know that there's going to be ups and downs along the way. But I think those three things are really important, because if we try to do too much at one time, then we're just going to get frustrated because we're not going to be like following through with it. If it's something that we don't like actually kind of enjoy or are interested in, it's also not going to be sticky. So just start small, do something that you enjoy, but do stick with it for a while, because it does take a little bit to start to really feel into things, because it's ultimately a practice.
Start small, follow through. Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was so nice to talk with you, and I hope everybody got a little bit of a better picture of how amazing Sand and Salt Escapes is and Max's real love for the work that he does. So thank you, Max.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of our Perspective series. Please tune in next week for our third and final episode, where I'll be joined by Amanda Lobo and Nicole Deal from the Thoughtium team to discuss how to build a well-being program that actually works. Thank you.